Hey guys, how's it going? 6Speed here, and today I'm going to teach you how to make this really sick wonky bass sounds a little something like this. So without further ado, let's get started.
We can attack the city.
Bam! Okay, let's get this going. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is jump over to Ableton. And now that we're over here, I just want to go over why I love the sound so much. Super versatile sound. Can use in one of two ways. First way is a tramp-esque kind of style with a riser by playing with the pitch bend, which sounds like this. And if you layer that with a couple other basses with the same kind of idea but just different harmonics, then you can make a really sick sounding trampa style bass. As well, you can use it in the second way, which is the more classic kind of minimal rhythm way, and it sounds something like this. So yeah, there's a lot of potential with this bass. So without further ado, let's get going with it. So let's open up our initial preset here. Hit this initial preset. Okay, so let's start off with oscillator A. First thing we want to do is detune this by 2 octaves. 1 and then 2. And then open up analog and then go to basic shapes. And we're going to head over to wavetable 2, which happens to be the sawtooth wave. We are going to throw macro 1 on there. The only modulation that I personally use is macro 1 from my dubstep basses, just because I like to automate it in Ableton instead of having multiple instances of Serum with different LFO rates or trying to play with it that way. This is the way that I've kind of taught myself. So if you guys don't, then just as you know, this is a very good way to get different LFO rates with the same bass, but not having to have bogging down your CPU with multiple Serum instances. So let's get started with that. We just wanted to bring this down to about 24%, just so that we know that when it plays and we play with the macro, that it's changing the wavetable from the saw to the saw wave to the triangle wave. That's the important part here. So that's good to go. The next thing that we want to do is we want to bring the level all the way down and throw some modulation on there. And then this is how you, so now the sound is basically controlled by macro 1. It only makes a sound if it is engaged and if it is not engaged. So we're going to open up FM from B, and we're going to turn this one up to 33%. And this is really important as well, because the small tweak of even to 32 or 34 makes a drastic alteration in the sound. So we want to make sure that's spot on at 33%, and then we want to throw macro 1 on there and modulate it up about 18%. So it's something like that. And then this is basically it for wavetable, or sorry, not wavetable, oscillator A. So now we are going to move on to oscillator B. First things first, tune it up by 1 octave. We're going to hit the analog, and then you guessed it, basic shapes, and then hit that triangle, or no, saw wave. Yeah, that's the saw wave. And then we want to go to sync, and we are going to turn the sync up to 1.99%. This again, like the FM, because they feed off of each other, is very important, and you want to make sure that this stuff is spot on, because if it isn't, then your sound is going to be very different. So like I said, 1.99%. And then we're going to hit it with some modulation, and we are going to increase the sync by only 11%. Make sure that that's on there, because this is now about the 8th time I've had to do this tutorial, because I keep messing up the end sound because I don't have that sync right, and then I end up troubleshooting for about an hour trying to figure out how to tune properly and get it all to work. We as well are going to bring the level down to 0, and then that's pretty much it for oscillator B. Now let's move on to the filter. Actually, no. I'm going to turn on mono and legato hit this bad boy, turn the porta up to about 100 milliseconds, get a little bit more gliding between the notes. Just makes it sound really smooth and does some cool things with it. And then we're gonna check out to see how bad boy sounds. Okay, so that's pretty good. We're on track definitely, because that's sounding like it. That's definitely a very solid bass sound. So the next step is to open up turn on the filter, and then we are going to go to miscellaneous, and then combs filter. What we want to do here is we want to leave it on A. Don't want to turn anything else on. Bring the cutoff to about 65 hertz. Yeah, 65. 65. There we go. Okay, she's on the 65 there, and then we're also going to modulate this and increase it by about 6% with macro 1. So nothing too big, just a nice little thing to give it a little bit more movement. Resonance we're going to turn up to 28%. Bring that bad boy up. That's way too high. Pan can stay the same. Your drive we're going to bring to about 23%. Or 3, there you are. And then damp can stay the same, and then mix. So that's pretty much it for the oscillator tab, and this is about how your sound should be sounding. So yeah, now we are going to move on to the FX tab. The FX that we're going to be using today are going to be the hyper and dimension expander. We are going to be using a phaser, an EQ, and then as well as the compressor. Everything else you can forget about. So with the hyper, what we're going to do is we're going to bring the rate down to 14%, and then we're going to do the same with the D2. We're going to bring that bad boy down to about 4%. Right there. Yeehaw! Okay, so after that, we're going to go over to the mix hyper, bring that to 7%. Somewhere around there. Dimension expander, bring the size down to about 7%. Oh, that's an 8. Oh, there we go, 7. And we're going to bring the mix up to about 70%. We're going to modulate this as well with macro 1. So let's grab macro 1, throw that bad boy on there. And we want somewhere about 27, 28, 30. Basically, we just don't want it to be too small. We want it to be about kind of right about there, so that it's bringing the mix all the way up on the dimension expander. The next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to move on to the phaser. With phaser, bring the rate down to 0 hertz, bring the depth down to 0 hertz, bring the frequency down, leave feed, leave the phase, and then we are also going to bring the mix down to about 82%. Now, we want to take macro 1 and modulate the depth. We're going to modulate the depth by about 23%. So we're going to increase it so it goes up about 23%. And then basically what this is going to do is just going to make the sound a little bit wider and more crisp. So we all like to hear in our basses. It's right there. Okay, whatever. 23%, somewhere around there. So this is approximately what your bass should sound like now. And I'll show you what it sounds like with and without the phaser. So as you see, it just kind of widens the sound out and then kind of levels it off a little bit, brings the high end up and crisps it out a little bit, and just makes it sound like it's a little bit more in your face and present. So now we're going to move on to the EQ. Going to hit that bell type EQ for the first one. We are going to bring the frequency down to 67 hertz. 6 to 7. Okay, and now we want to throw some modulation on there, but we are only going to modulate it for about 29%. Let's go 29 or 30, whatever floats your boat. Oh, it's too high. I don't want to go 31. We're going to bring the Q down to about 40%, and then we're going to bring the gain up to 8.8, or somewhere in there, approximately. Like that. We're going to keep the second EQ on a high shelf. We are going to bring the filter, or if not filter, the frequency down to 266 hertz. We are going to modulate that as well, but it's going to be a small wee nudge of 8%. Like that. We're going to bring the Q up to about 74%. And then the gain up to 3.8%. Or somewhere around there, like that. And that's pretty much it for the sound. So your sound should sound something like this right now. Bam, bam. And also we're going to throw a compressor on there quickly. Hit that multiband. I'm going to drag the low down a little bit because we don't want to compress that one too much. And then bring the gain up to taste. And bam, there you have it. A really badass wonky bass. Okay, so that pretty much wraps her up for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to give you a reminder that as soon as I hit 50 subscribers, I'm going to be giving away some studio monitor headphones. I've actually showed you guys in the last 2 videos what they look like. So if you want to know, there will be a link below that will show you guys a video which will show you the headphones I'm giving away. As well, make sure to join that notification squad because you guys don't want to be missing out on this free giveaway, right? Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And let me know what you'd like to see for future sound design tutorials or just tutorials in general. Thanks again. 6 Speed out.
They can attack the city.